Alrighty, so as promised, today we are going to look at the Philadelphia Union in terms of the Supporter Shield winning season, and I'm pretty sure nobody saw this coming. I mean, even if you're a Philadelphia Union fan when the season began, you would have never imagined the fact that this team would get themselves being the top team in the entire league by the end of the season, winning the Supporter Shield for the second time since they won it the first time in the COVID short season. Because with how this season come in, with Bradley Carnell coming in as the new head coach, replacing the legend that is Jim Curtin, and that there was a lot of uncertainty of whether if he was going to do well with this team. And just straight up, I've mentioned in my moving forward series of last season how this Union team, it feels like they're heading toward a little bit of a retool kind of season, kind of a transition season, with the way that a lot of the main core pieces that brought them with so much success in the last couple of years in the regular season and eventually made it a couple of deep run into the playoffs, even made it to MLS Cup back in 2022. With most of those pieces are gone, you're just thinking, well, now how is this team going? So it feels like this team's probably going to suck for a bit before get themselves back to the top of the mountain. And the answer, well, it turns out that was not the case. And a big part of that is because it feels like what we kind of underestimate with this Union team is the fact that they kind of had a plan in place when it comes to making the transition. They a lot of guys that were supposed to come in to replace some of those guys that is part of the main core. Seems like that transition has really worked well. So guys like Danny John Jack, who would have thought that he would be a great replacement for Jose Martinez that they lost in that number 6 position. And Ty Barri, well, I mean, who would have thought he would be a perfect replacement in that 9 position after losing Julia Carranza as well, and even Daniel Gastat getting traded off, which is something that kind of shocked a lot of Union fans in the middle of the season. But in reality, it kind of actually helped this team in a sense that guys have been able to step up. They don't really have a real number 10 on this team, besides if you want to count Quinn Sullivan as one of them. But one thing for sure is that another thing that's kind of interesting about this Union team, with a Bradley Carnell team, we always seen that the Bradley Carnell team likes to do that energy drink soccer kind of thing. We saw it when he was taking as an interim head coach with the Red Bulls. We saw it when he took as the head coach of St. Louis in that first season, and it was relatively successful. But one thing about energy drink soccer is the fact that will the team get tired out by the end of the season? Because with all that running and all that chasing and pressing, it could tire the team out, and we kind of saw that with St. Louis with Bradley Carnell's side, where they kind of got a little tired out, and eventually it mean that, yeah, they suffer a first round exit. But we kind of didn't see it with this Union side. In fact, I don't think when you look at how the Union have playing under Bradley Carnell, it isn't really the energy drink soccer kind of style that he implemented this team. I wonder, did he kind of saw that and realized that, yeah, that's not going to really work out for the entire season. It might work out in the short term. You can be a decent team, but at the end of the day, maybe you could sometimes be a little bit pragmatic. Maybe sometimes you can be like a very physical kind of a team that could also work out, and that's kind of what we saw with the Union in this one. In many ways, I feel like this Union team is a little different than we seen in past Union team. Past Union team tends to score a lot of goals and play some very fun soccer, as we saw with Jim Curran the last couple of years. This team isn't really kind of that team. This is a team that is very hard nosed, kind of hard working kind of style, and really just describe what Philadelphia is in a sense that they're not going to score a ton of goals, but they're going to bloody you. They're going to work hard. They're going to be physical, and that's why we saw most of the games that they play this season, with some exception to some of the games that they have are relatively low scoring, and it also kind of shows in terms of the goal scoring and goal allowed that they have this season. Now, the current record is 26-7, which is 66 points in terms of the total. They only score 57 goals, which is pretty low when it comes to a Supporter Shield winning side. We usually see Supporter Shield winning side get like 60 plus goal, or even 70, or in the case of Inter Miami, I think they got like 80 something goals whatsoever. But again, this is not a team that is built in terms of just going to outscore or team left, right, and center. This is a team that is built more on the defensive end, and it kind of shows in the goal allowed. 33 goals conceded this season. And what's even crazier is the fact that 7 of those 33 goals that was conceded have been in one game. So if you minus what happened in that 7-0 thrashing that they took in the hands of the Vancouver Whitecaps, which was equally the worst game that they played this season and maybe in franchise history. Well, actually, it's not even maybe. It is the worst game in franchise history. They have never suffered that big of a thrashing in a single game. If you minus that game as an outlier, they actually conceded only 26 goals if you minus that game as well. That just shows you how good defensively they are, and this is also a big surprise considering they lost some key defensive pieces, and the defense was a big question with this team last season as well. But it turns out, who would have thought that Jacob Gilles had a big bounce back year this year, and then this guy called Macania. It turns out he was very good. When they bought him a couple of years ago, didn't really get some start when he first came in, but now stepped into that spot, and yeah, who would have thought that he would be amazing. And even Andre Blake, of course. What's also kind of interesting is that they throughout the season, know people will talk about how good Blake is, but let's forget about Andrew Rick as well. Rick did stepped in a couple of times. Blake didn't play most of this season as well. He was on the IR a couple of times this season, and Rick did a good job in terms of filling that role. So that's another reason why we see the Union were very good on the defensive front. Not only they have a very good defense, but in the goalkeeping position, I mean, it's not just the fact that their number one goalkeeper is having another great season, but even their number two goalkeeper, when he has to step in for the number one, has also equally been decent for this Union side. Now, when you look at how the season began, it started with a 4-2 win against Orlando City. Now, at this point, it was kind of a surprising result because Orlando, coming off of the Eastern Conference final appearance and looking to go at it again, we thought that this was a game where Orlando was probably going to topple the Union, but instead the Union did a 180. They won 4-2 in that one, and then they won 4-1 against FC Cincinnati. So again, I know I mentioned before that this team is not known to score a lot of goals. Early on, that kind of was the case. I mean, they scored 8 goals coming out of the game. In fact, they scored 10 goals coming out of the game. You include the 2-0 win that they had against the New England Revolution. But this is kind of when the goal scoring kind of started to line up a little bit. First, they lost 3-1 against Nashville. That was a game they had a red card in that one. They did win 1-0 against St. Louis in the Bradley Carnell derby, but then the very next game they go to Miami and lose 2-1 in that one, which is no shame in terms of that. A lot of teams would have lost to Miami, especially with Miami start the season relatively well. Then they had a 0-0 draw against Orlando City before winning 3-0 against Atlanta and winning 3-0 against DC United. So these were the game where the goal scoring kind of came back, but again, it's also important to know that these were two teams that are now among the worst team in the league and among the worst defensive team in the league as well. In the case of DC United, I mean, anytime when the Philadelphia Union face against DC, you know that they're gonna pour it on. I mean, they not only own DC United, but they make sure they put a big number, and it's been just a one-sided affair for the past couple of years. Then the next game, they go on the road against Montreal and win 2-1 in that one. They did have a 2-2 draw against Columbus before winning 1-0 on the road against Atlanta United. Then they had a 3-3 draw against Inter Miami. This was a game where they were up 3-1 in this one. And even Miami was not doing very well during this part of the time. So this felt like a really big missed opportunity for the Union to not able to hold on to it. And that is also kind of part of the fact that that Inter Miami showed a little bit of what they did last season, of the fact that you just cannot count this team down, even if they're down multiple goals late in the game. They have some key players on that team. A guy called Lionel Messi on that team as well that could make some magic for the team to come back, and that's exactly what happened. Now they did get a 2-1 win on the road against Toronto FC before drawing 0-0 against FC Dallas on March 31st. So one of the other things that was kind of interesting about the Union throughout the season is that this team, I mean, they're kind of flying under the radar when it comes to being a good team. Everybody talk about how good Cincinnati, Columbus, and Miami has been throughout the season, but not a lot of people talk about how the Unions are just kind of hanging there around the top spot throughout the majority of the season. And I know some people will say, well, eventually that team is gonna fall off. And there's times where you could say that they maybe back their way into the top spot by default because of some of the teams in the East were stripping themselves. But hey, I mean that's they don't care that they're flying under the radar. In fact, they're happy the fact that they're flying under the radar and not talk as much, so that they can keep themselves being at the top spot in the East. But after that, they won 2-1 against Charlotte FC before going on the road to win 1-0 against the Chicago Fire. Then they did lose 1-0 to Nashville. Yeah, something tells me the Union do not want to play Nashville in the season. They have not had a good history with Nashville. That's kind of the one team that they just are just could not figure out this season. We saw them lose both time in league, and then we also saw it happen in the U.S. Open Cup, which, by the way, I know that happened because I was there when the Union got eliminated to Nashville at Geodis Park for that U.S. Open Cup semifinal. So I'm pretty sure Union fans are praying the fact that better not be Nashville in terms of the first round. Imagine the first round matchup. Imagine Nashville will somehow how fall themselves out into the play-in round, and somehow they get themselves winning the play-in round. That literally the first game best of three series the Union are going to be playing is against Nashville SC. Like that is the worst nightmare for Union fans because, like I said, that matchup is just a nightmare for them. They just do not match up with Nashville whatsoever. Whatever BJ Callahan has known to how to dissect this Brantley Kern outside. That is a matchup that, like I said, for a lot of Union fans, they better hope if there's any team that they, of course, will face that will definitely give them trouble. Nashville is definitely going to be the team to do so. Then they, of course, won 2-0 against the New York Red Bulls, and I believe Nashville is kind of the only team, if I look on the board, that actually did a double against. I don't think anybody on this board did a double against the Philadelphia Union. I mean, they only lost seven games this season all year long. But then after that, they, of course, won 2-1 against Montreal. Then they drew 1-1 against the Houston Dynamo before winning 3-1 against the Colorado Rapids. They did have a 1-1 draw against Toronto FC. And again, this is kind of the part where we kind of question, well, are they going to hang around because teams are starting to catch up on them in the first spot. And that was even more increase in terms of concern because they lost 1-0 against the New York Red Bulls. It's the first time they lost to the Red Bulls in quite some while. But they answer that well with them winning 4-0 against the Chicago Fire the very next game. Then they go on the road and win 1-0 against Cincinnati, a game that virtually was a supporter shield decider because both of those teams were kind of fighting pretty close in term so that spot. So after a big statement win that they have, how do they follow after a big statement win like that? Well, they lost 7-0 to the Vancouver Whitecaps, and it's safe to say that again. I've always said that even the best of teams are going to have one of those games where everything just goes wrong for them, and it just doesn't look like themselves. That was a textbook example of it. That was a combination of the Union just clearly did not look like themselves coming into that game, and the Vancouver Whitecaps just want to make a statement. Like the Whitecaps look like they're back to where they were in the beginning of the season, being an absolute wagon in the not only in the West but also in the Supporter Shield race. And yeah, they absolutely smack the Union in that one. 7-0 was the result. I'm very interested to see if both of those teams somehow meet each other in MLS Cup. I have a feeling it's probably not going to be 7-0 again. That was just that was surreal to see how the Vancouver Whitecaps just pour it on like that against the Union. So the question is, can they respond after that? Well, they had that tough loss in the elimination in the U.S. Open Cup. Arguably, that was probably the toughest last two game stretch the Union has ever had. I mean, imagine losing 7-0 and then followed that by losing in the U.S. Open Cup semifinal and miss your chance to make it to the final. Well, how will they respond? Well, they did win 1-0 against New England. It wasn't a pretty win, but again, with the way that the Union desperately need a win after two just gut wrenching games that they have, they were able to do exactly that, and then they get to face against their favorite opponent, DC United. Again, anytime when they face against DC, it's pretty much you might as well just say the Union have automatically got themselves 6 points before the season begins because they know that they're going to beat DC and they know that they can beat them relatively well, and that's exactly what we saw. 6-0 was the result against DC United, and then of course in this previous week against NYCFC, it wasn't a pretty game for their standards, but at the same time, it was kind of like your typical Union game where it was a smash mouth kind of game, trying to be physical against NYCFC, limiting their chances, and they make a 1-0 win to win the Supporter Shield once again. Now, looking at the top goal scorer of this team, so Ty Baribo, of course, there was a lot of question. Can he follow that up this season as well? Especially last season in the latter part, it feels like he went for a bit of a goal dry spell. You just wonder, with him kind of had that coming out party in the middle of last season. Once he hit that goal scoring spell, is that kind of just saying that? Well, it feels like his insanity run is over. No. Instead, he backed up with 16 goals. Now he has definitely not scored as much as we saw in the beginning of the season. He was on an absolute tear in the beginning of the season. and has slowed down a bit, but still able to chip up with 16 goals this season, followed by Bruno Diamante, which is kind of interesting because Diamante has been one of the more criticized player in the Union fan base. The fact that he has not lived up to the potential and the contract that he got, but he still is the second top goal scorer with 7 goals. And credit to him also the fact that he's been fighting it through this season when it comes to goal scoring. He has had his issue with his finishing, but the fact that he's still able to be the second goal scorer or the second top goal scorer in this list says something. The fact that even though he's fighting it at times, he's still able to put the ball into the back net and especially put the ball in the back of net in some crucial moment as well. Then you have the forgotten man, Mikael Uru, a guy that, kind of has been a little bit forgotten, a guy that maybe might be playing his final season with the Union, especially with the recent arrival of Ilowski. He's still able to chip up with 6 goals, followed by Indiana Vaslev with 5 goals, and Danny John Jack even ends up in the top goal scoring chart with 3 goals to round up the top five. So again, what's kind of interesting is that for a team that won the Supporter Shield, you would have expected there would be multiple guys have 10 plus goal, but here the number seems pretty low. I mean, besides Rebo, this team doesn't really have a guy that you could say that is truly a big goal scoring threat for this team. Then you look at the top assist leader, and the top assist leader is Kyle Wagner, who is considered to be the best fullback and the best attacking fullback when it comes to creativity in the league. I mean, it's surreal to see how in his position how many times he's been able to create the assist, and a guy that also is probably one of the best crosser in the league. I think besides him and Julian Gresso, considered to be the best crosser in the league, and he notched up with 11 assists. And then, of course, that's followed by Chris Sullivan. This is going to be a huge blow for the Philadelphia Union. With the way that Sullivan is done for the season because of an ACL, he was definitely a big creative player for this Union side, but now he's done for the season, and they're definitely going to miss his production heading into the postseason and heading into the last game on decision day with 9 assists. Then you got Mikael Uru with 6 assists. Milan Iloski actually ends up on the top 4 assist chart, which that is kind of surprising because he's more known to score goals, especially during his short time with San Diego. But he ends up with 5 assists, and then Frankie Westfield, another guy that a guy that coming out of the Union Academy. One thing we know about this Union team is that because of the way that they have a really good academy, especially of their second team, always produce some really good player that are MLS ready. This is kind of maybe the reason why we see them go for a transitional period that is much smoother than other team because they do have the resources, even if they're not spending as much as they should be, which is something that Union fans are still very upset about their front office. But because of the fact that they have a strong academy, they don't really need to spend too much and don't really need to do what some other team has. This is also kind of an example where I have hear people say, "Well, you need to spend a lot of money to be successful, and you need to to keep up with the Joneses and the top spender in the league to try to be successful." Well, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, yes, we have seen some teams that spend money and able to build a pretty good team, but we have seen more times or not teams when they're able to be smart with their signing, because I think at the end of the day, it's not about how much you spend. It's about how smart that you spend the money, and if these players can live up to the potential, because we have seen teams that have spent a lot of money. I mean, Atlanta is a prime example of them spending so much money, burning money left, right, and center, and look where they are in the standing. And the same goes for Toronto FC as well. They're a team that also spent a lot of money. Look where they've been going through these last couple of years. Because of the fact that again they have a very strong academy, and they always tends to hit well with their super draft picks when they of course have them. This is kind of the reason why we maybe underestimate the fact that they were actually pretty okay. Okay, I mean, as long as the pipeline of this Union Academy continue to produce some MLS ready kind of player that keep them competitive, they're gonna always be considered to be a competitive team year in and year out. And it's crazy to see that with the old core that is now decimated, that this new core that they currently have could actually now not only extend the window of their MLS Cup window, but maybe even continue that, and they're back in the business in terms of finally conquer that mountain, which is winning MLS Cup. But looking at the last 5 Supporter Shield winners, so I want to look at this because again, we talk about before the Supporter Shield, it feels like it's a curse when you win the Supporter Shield, because usually when you win the Supporter Shield, you don't end up winning MLS Cup. In fact, going back to 2010, only 3 Supporter Shield winner have won MLS Cup. We saw the Galaxy did it back in 2011, saw Toronto FC did it in 2017, and most recently LAFC did it in 2022, and we remember last year when the supporter shield winner team that actually got a record amount of points, that is Inter Miami with a 22-4-8 record. Yeah, let's just say it did not go so well for them. They lost in that first round against Atlanta United. Now, I'm not saying that that might be the same thing about the Philadelphia Union, unless of course if they play Nashville. I mean, Nashville is literally going to be the team. I wouldn't even be surprised if Nashville would just purposely lose their game so they can be in the play-in round and maybe win that play-in round so they get to knock out the Union again in the first round. Like that would be the worst nightmare for Union fans to see Nashville will be the team that they might have to face in the first round. And it's also important to know, as I'll talk about in just a bit, of the fact that, yeah, last time the Union won the Support Shield, it didn't go so well for them either. But it also, like I said, didn't go so well for Miami. Losing in the first round, that is considered to be the biggest upset we have ever seen in MLS playoff history. Then after that, you got Cincinnati with a 25-9 record, finished with 69 points. Nice. But they also lose in the Eastern Conference Final, and that was a game where they choked that game against Columbus. They had a 2-0 lead in that one, pretty much to the Minnesota in that game in the conference final, and lose to Columbus, which eventually won MLS Cup. We already mentioned LAFC, of course, won MLS Cup that have a 21-9 and 4 record and finished with 67 points. Yeah, that is a year that Union fans don't want to hear about, because that was the year when they went to MLS Cup, and that was the year that LAFC probably should have lost that one if it wasn't for Gareth Bale scoring a 123rd minute winner and go down as probably the greatest MLS Cup we've ever seen in this league history. Though, again, if you're a Union fan, you definitely do not want to remember that game, because that was the wrong end. You're on the wrong end of history of the greatest MLS Cup game in this league history. Then in 2021, we saw New England finish with a 22-5-7 record, and back then this was the points record at 73 points. But remember, this was also a time when the playoff format was very strange, and they had like a 3-week period off, and they end up losing in the second round against NYCFC. Part of that mainly because of the long rest that they had, and New England fans will never forgive the league in terms of that is the case because of the scheduling. And then, of course, the last time when the Union won the Supporter Shield was back in 2020. They finished with a 14-4-5 record, finished with 47 points in that COVID shortened season. They lost in the first round against the New England Revolution. And that was a game where, they were playing at home. They were perfect that season at home. And that was the first loss that they have. And that was possibly the worst game that they play in the game against New England. That's how things can change. This is why, I can now understand why the Supporter Shield curse is there, and why Supporter Shield winner doesn't usually end up winning MLS Cup, because when you look at the playoff format, and I know there's been a lot of change of playoff format over recent years, but with the way that if you just look past the first round, which is the best of 3 series, all of them are single elimination. You could have a situation where even some of the best team in the league, as I mentioned, would have some all off night, and that's all it takes. And the Union are better hope that off night doesn't come in playoffs, because as I mentioned before, as much as I know this has been an incredible season, this has been a year that, I mean, if you're a Union fan, I feel like this is still going to be a successful year. Consider there was not a lot of expectation with this team for coming into this season, but it just also kind of makes you feel like, with all the failures that they have in the playoffs in the last couple of years, this maybe be one of your best opportunity to finally conquer the mountain. I mean, you have home field advantage throughout the entire part of the playoffs, and the fact that they've been very good this season at home again, compared to last season and the previous season as well. This has to be the year that they might capitalize on the chance. But it also could not be the year, because again, the Eastern Conference, it's going to be an absolute bloodbath. There's going to be a lot of team in the East that are very good this season. So yeah, we'll see what's the fate the Union is going to be heading into the playoffs. Are they going to be once again ends up to be part of that curse of Supporter Shield winner, ends up to flame out relatively early, or eventually suffer a heartbreaking loss later in the playoffs? Or will the Union finally do it? Will they finally vanquish the legacy of failure that this team has had, and really kind of finally make the previous core happy and proud, the fact that this team finally conquered the mountain of MLS Cup? Because I'm pretty sure, I know Union fans will be happy that they won their second Supporter Shield win, but it gets to a point where they do not want to end up in the same situation as the New York Red Bulls are currently in. Where, remember, the Red Bulls have been very good during the 2010, winning a couple of Supporter Shield. They had a dynasty of Supporter Shield, with them winning 3 and 6 year. And what is it to show for in terms of MLS Cup resort? Absolutely zero. They didn't even make it to the MLS Cup in any of those years as well. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. Looking at the Philadelphia Union in terms of their Supporter Shield season. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and let me know in the comments below if you're a Union fan. What is your expectation is going to be heading into the playoffs, and how far do you think this team can go into the playoffs? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.